Welcome to Office Hours, where we've been answering your media and tech-related production questions every single day since March 25th, 2020. Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, is our reader today. Alexander, what's first on tap for us?
First question is coming in from someone named Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, BC, Canada.
Who?
I prompted Google Veo to... Yeah, it seems like a shifty person. I prompted Google Veo to generate a looping animated background so I can use it as a super source. It turned out decent, but there is a Veo watermark, and I can't figure out how to remove it. Any idea?
Jeffrey Powers is going to try to help you out here. Jeffrey?
It's not a watermark. It's a synth ID. And yeah, it's Google's thing. In fact, they have a whole paragraph on that, basically saying that the synth ID detector was rolled out to identify and blah, 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 blah. So there is no word. I think if you were an Ultra user, you might be able to get rid of it, or at least opaque it as enough to not notice it. But it's always, even if it becomes not visible to human eye, that synth ID, that's what they're working on, is getting that synth ID so detectors can notice that it is AI-driven video. That way, if there's bad deep fakes that are made, then it can be identified and flagged as such. So I guess the only way to do it is just to go into an editor and either blur it out, but that might go against the rules, and you might have to be forced to just live with it.
Wait, that's interesting. I wonder if they're going to come up with glasses or lenses you can put on, or maybe something like the 3D movie cellophane things, and say, oh, that's who created this. That'd be a fascinating thing. Next question.
Ronnie Hofso in Trumpso Nowhere is asking, if not using Decklink for multiple I/O for ZoomISO, what else is there beside using multiple Ultrastudio Recorders / player to get high-quality, non-UVC video in and out of a Mac Mini?
Guy Cochran's going to start us off here. Guy?
Yeah, if we look at just what capture cards are on the market, yeah, predominantly people are going to be using something like a Blackmagic, an AJ, and that's going to be baseband, SDI, or HDMI. But there are these new flavors of 2110. It's just how do we get them in? There's also things like Dante AV that's coming on the scene. So you could use a device like that. You can also use NDI, of course. MIMO stands for multiple in, multiple out, and if we go into the file menu and we look at what all the choices are for bringing video in, I mean, there's even FFmpeg built into there where you can pull an SRT stream, so SRT will add some latency, so it depends on how fast that you need that signal in, because we even use Zoom, believe it or not, to backhaul signals around remotely. So 1080p looks dang good, so we're doing teleprompting program, a quad split of everything that was at master control, all through Zoom, and then I could just boom, 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 bring them in through Zoom. I mean, through mimoLive, and then you can take a Zoom input and kick it over to NDI, or you could use ZoomISO. So there's other ways of throwing that signal around. It just depends on how high quality you want it. So NDI, of course, is fast, and you could go NDI HX even, which will give you fast and low bandwidth, because if you go like 4K, multiple feeds over a 10 gig Ethernet connection going into that machine, all of a sudden you get 10 feeds and you can overwhelm a NIC. So you can do multiple NICs, so you could have the built-in one to bring in maybe a 1 gig. If you have a 1 gig connection, then you could add a 10 gig Thunderbolt Sonnet that is just Ethernet. So that's the way I bring in a lot of stuff. Is I have these, they're like $200 to $300. OWC makes one as well. So those are some of the ways. It just depends on what kind of feed that you need, because there's other things like JPEG XS and some of the broadcasters use that are super high quality, but a lot of us just wouldn't use that kind of encoding and decoding hardware.
Ronnie Hofsoy.
Yeah, so normally we can use NDI, of course, and all the other stuff that you mentioned. And what I'm looking for is something that is less hassle than using a Sonnet box or OWC box with a Decklink card or similar. Is there any other hardware that, for instance, have multiple in-out NDI that is kind of easy to implement and start using. And this doesn't need to be professional level. This can be like in house of worship work jobs or not as important tasks. I'm looking for maybe some new stuff. I know much of the older stuff that we already talked about. Is there any new vendors on the market that are actually providing either SDI or HDMI in and outputs?
Not that I've seen, but I'll tell you what not to do, just because it'll be a headache. And it seems like you've already pulled your hair out. I still got some, so I'm joking. But a lot of people have used these Camlink 4Ks, multiples of them, and it may work for a little bit, but because of the way that UVC works, it can be a gotcha. And I've seen multiple people go down because they think that they can go that cheap route. So, you know, how important is failure? So when you start to get into the Sonnet box and, you know, a Decklink, it's like, hey, there's a reason why we use it that way, because it's stable and it works every single time. There's a box by AJA, that the IO box, that will allow you to do the same thing over Thunderbolt, but that one's big bucks. Maybe somebody in the chat has another way of bringing stuff in cheaply. Maybe there's a way of slicing and dicing a 4K image or something. I'm not sure, but I know that you do not want to do multiple UVC devices into one of the same brand. You might be able to get away with trying multiple different brands, but then again, you're just opening up a can of worms, and UVC can be compressed pretty heavily and ratty, depending on how quality of a capture card it is, because they're $19 on Amazon for a cheap one.
Ronnie, you wanted to follow up?
Yeah, UVC is actually a part of the question as well. We tend to steer clear of them, even if we use it all the time. But in a more stable, I would be thinking of, since this is going into mimoLive or similar, I was thinking of just having a few baseband, so SDI or HDMI, going into NDI. We have a few boxes that do the other way around, so from NDI to physical interface. So it needs to be more than one, I guess. So we could, of course, just purchase single ones, but I'm actually looking for something that can get a baseband or HDMI into something, and something to convert it out again. And of course, we know these cards from Blackmagic, like Decklink and Ultrastudio, etc., and try to steer away from UVC. So anything that can be done there.
One last thought, Guy?
Yeah, I mean, there is something like Video Ninja too. If you can get it into an IP format into Video Ninja, you can do add browser input in, and so basically what Video Ninja does is it allows a web browser on the other side to take in a webcam, then kick it back out as a web browser input into your device. But this is a Bird Dog HDMI 4K NDI encoder, so this would be full fat NDI. This is a ZowieBox for $150. It'll allow you to do HDMI, or there's an SDI version as well that'll allow you to do NDI HX3. That's very lightweight. And then this is the Magewell 4K NDI to full fat again. And this one actually has PTZ controls as well. So a couple different options if you wanted to spend that kind of money. But the ZowieBox is where I'd start, because those things are amazing for the money.
Nicely done. Thank you all. Next question.
This is a QR code question coming from Max Schiffman in San Diego. We are live streaming a training program using vMix to Vimeo into our company's LMS. However, we are set up hardwired on the Office network. What's the best way to ensure both redundancy and a backup so we're not relying on a single PC/connection?
And Jeffrey Powers is going to do some help here. Jeffrey?
Well, yeah, there's many different ways to do it, and the real question is, do you want it in pre or post? Do you want to do your videos beforehand and back up, or do you want to do the vMix after the fact and then back up from there? If your Office network is not reliable, then I'd be very surprised on that if you're running like super slow, but bonding solutions are always good options to make sure that you have that primary connection go down. And I would always focus on the primary connection first. But having backup solutions is always a great way to do it. Like, for instance, with my computer, I have a backup solution to another machine. So if this was to freeze up or anything like that, that I could switch over to the backup machine and move things over really quick. So it's really dependent on what you have in your arsenal to be able to make those switches. And you can go easily from vMix to OBS. You're not going to have the same functionality as vMix. You might lose some features, but you could continue on with your stream if you're talking about just simply going to the exact same streaming area. And then using something like what Guy just showed with the ZowieBox in between to send that, so it would encode from there and then send out to Vimeo. That way you can switch from one, let's say you have two vMix boxes set up exactly running the same thing. You could switch from one to the other without issue.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. It just depends on how much you want to spend and how many resources that you have. I mean, vMix into Vimeo sounds pretty straightforward, but let's say, for instance, Vimeo goes down, so let's start there. Do you have another CDN that you could push it into, even Zoom Webinar or YouTube, or just a privately listed one, or Cloudflare has some ways to, or Wowza. There's a number of different CDNs where you can push this to. It's just, how do you let your audience know immediately? Do you have like a Slack channel, or do you have, would it be an email push? That just depends. And then on the vMix on the front end, how crazy do you want to go? Because you could just get like a router that you could take a single camera. If it's just a single camera push that, let's say your whole vMix machine dies, then you've got that camera going into an encoder that goes to, let's say, Cloudflare. So now all of a sudden you have a total separate back channel. But what if there's a playout going on? So this is where having like multiple vMix machines using something like Command Delegator by Central Control, where every button push on a Stream Deck, everything that you do is mimicked on the other machine. So again, how crazy do you want to get as far as redundancy? Because you can have your vMix show completely dialed in to both machines at the same time, and then just pushing to separate CDNs. Because I'm not sure if Vimeo does a RTMP-B and an RTMP-A if your encoder just failed. I mean, because you could also just stick two encoders, two hardware encoders at the end of the chain. So again, there's all these different places. And then we didn't even talk about internet. Do you want to have this secondary failover on a separate power line, on a separate internet connection? So there's redundancies at every spot, where you can go crazy, and it all is money. And sometimes the redundancy can create another failure point. So be careful of that as well as you're engineering this out.
This is how network engineers dream to avoid failures. Ronnie Hossoy, your thoughts?
Yeah, the last thing Guy Cochran said, redundancy is a cost, of course, but the biggest thing is if you don't test it thoroughly and make sure that the redundancy itself doesn't create new problems, you will probably be good. But to just to add to that, it's costing if you need double power supply, if you need double sources, for instance, if you need double the vMix instances, everything is divided in layers, kind of. So you have to decide which is your most critical things and start to do the redundancy there. Typically, I would think of the vMix machine itself to be one of the most critical things. If Vimeo goes down, it's a good idea to have something in the backup, and that depends on your LMS. If your LMS is supporting different types of sources for the live feed, that would probably be good. I don't know of any that does that seamlessly, so you have to provide two sources going into the LMS. And the viewer has to choose which one to follow. So it's about how critical it is. One thing I would say about the internet piece, I think it's better to have two different encoders on two entirely different internet accesses. So if you have the company network running on one of the vMix machines, find another way out of the building or the venue so that the other vMix machine can use that, or the other encoder can use that instead. And keep all the machines to do as less of a task as possible, so that you have multiple instances or multiple devices doing each stuff. maybe separate the encoder from the vMix image mixing, if that is important to you, and just make sure that you spend the money where it's most critical.
Don't forget, we're always taking your questions because this entire show is run on your questions, obviously. You can vote and generally chat about them in our Mukana backend system. That's our Mukana Q&A system. Go to officehours.global/join. That's kind of how you start the breadcrumb following to get into this system. We'll send you an email within a day or two, and once you've done that, you can ask, vote on, and discuss the show's questions in the live community. The community has been active today. It's been interesting to monitor, and you get people talking about our questions in real time and adding even more value to it. So that's that's officehours.global/join. Next question.
Another QR code question coming in from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. Are there any new and or recent innovations in the 3D printing world?
Jeffrey Powers is going to help us out here. Jeffrey?
Yeah, it's been a little while since I've looked at innovations. I think the biggest one that is on the filaments, and there's a company that's making what's called fiber reinforced filament that will help fuse and make these stronger, because some of these prints, like for instance, I have this right here. I've been working on my Jetson, and I made this Jetson Pi case a while ago, and it feels like a 3D printed model. So trying to make it so it's stronger and better, and even if you don't have your 3D printer tuned up properly, that it will kind of compensate and still come out with a great print. Other than that, there's some firmware updates with a thing called Clipper, which, and of course, it really depends on which 3D printer you do have. As for new 3D printers, I haven't really looked at the market too much. I know that Ender came out with their version 3 of the Ender, and so that's what everybody's probably going to be getting this next week for Black Friday deals, or I'm sorry, not Black Friday, but Prime Day deals. And so other than that, it's just little tweaks here and there, and you'd have to really just do some deep searching on that. But that's the basics right now that I know of.
Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. For those using MixEffect Pro to control an ATEM, what is a powerful but underutilized feature that can significantly speed up a solo operator's workflow during a complex live show?
Ronnie Houseoy's got some suggestions here. Ronnie?
Yeah, so besides the supersource control and animations, etc., that most of us use MixEffects for, you have the audio routing control, which is not being used of too many. He also have Adam Toll, that is the developer behind this, also have another tool that you should check out, which is the routing effects. Root effects, which makes it easy to route signals in your ATEM constellation or even routers. But the thing that I think that people are not very aware of in MixEffects is the video follow audio function. So if you have different microphones, let's say you have a panel debate or different kind of thing on stage, you have each camera going to each panelists, and you have one microphone for each panelist. You can set this up so that the camera switching is automatically done between all those single microphones. And if you're getting clever with your mix buses in your audio mixer, you can also group things so that you can have a kind of total view or a two-shot or a group shot or a total view going into this as well. So I think if more people were playing around with this, of course it's not perfect. It's just an emergency tool for us sometimes. But having a button on our Stream Deck that activates the video flow of audio could be a thought.
Guy Cochran?
Yeah, it depends on what kind of shows that you're doing, because a lot of corporate will utilize these super sources where you get these multiple boxes, kind of the newscaster look where you've got a person in Washington, D.C. and one in the studio, so you got this side-by-side look. And that's where the tools really come in handy, because if you look at the basic ATEM software control in this supersource panel, you have these basic layouts, and what you're paying for with MixEffect is really this ability to have all these different presets where you could push them and things start flying around. So if we look at this preview here, that's program on the right, you can see how we could fly stuff around. So that's really what you're paying for, is this look and this ability to do side by sides and pick and populate the people. But on other shows, the real winner is FitFocus Companion with macros. So if you have a ton of macros, so in MixEffect you can visualize these macros. So like here, there's tons of macros in here, and you can make all these as buttons. And so with an iPad or with a Mac Mini M series, you can have these as just buttons. Like I have a big Cintiq. Let me show you. This is a, I don't know if I could do this, but this is a touchscreen, a 24-inch touchscreen. So that whole macro pack of 99 macros can all be on here, and I can just sit there and touch. So when you're in a complicated show, and if you want to do these different looks, like we're building them in the mimoLive. So hardware versus software is a whole nother animal as well. Like we were building some 6ME type designs. So which ATEM are we talking about? Are we talking about your basic mini that has no super sources, and ATEM Extreme that has one, and then you go up to some of the other ones that have 2MEs, 4MEs, then the Constellation? How many looks do you need? So when you say a live show, to speed up a solo operator's workflow, I mean, we look at like what we do in extra hours with Viz, and we have the reason why that software costs $1,200 a month is because you can build out all these different looks and have an iPad type control, but we can do it on the cheap with some of these tools and combinations. So again, every show is different. It's really a matter of rehearsal and looking at the show and building all those looks before the director calls it or needs it. Because we were on a show last week where the guy was used to having a TriCaster and being able to just, he assumed that this stuff would just be readily available in all the looks, gazillions of different box, PowerPoint plus the three up of the panel would be an instant thing. But if during rehearsals, the guy said, hey, I want this 3-box, we were able to build that and have it ready within a few minutes, but not like in a TriCaster where it's instantaneous. So different tools for different jobs. This is where the whole Ross Carbonite versus Grass Valley versus Blackmagic versus software, just having your basic mimoLive or vMix or Wirecast can work well. But are you going to iMag? Because if you're going to iMag, then we're all hardware. We don't even want to mess around with software. So what do you want to build? So it's a complicated question.
The standard office hours answer depends. Don't forget, a couple of things I wanted to note. One more comment in the chat today. The ability to hide unused inputs is what Matthew LeCount likes particularly about this. There's always more great solutions in the chat as we do the show. Hey, and don't forget, this is Thursday. Got my T days wrong. And that means the rundown is tonight. David Paskin hosts a panel that takes a deeper dive into the why behind the latest tech. So that is tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And next question.
Next question is coming from Talala Lopez Waterman in Brevard, North Carolina. In Davinci Resolve, I love the captioning feature, but what it seems to be missing is a search function that can take your playhead to certain words or phrases. Am I correct or just missing it?
Alexander Knight, do you know?
It has that feature. It's had it since Davinci Resolve 18. And in fact, to go even a step further, it has people detection. So when it indexes everything and it takes a while to kind of crunch through everything, you can actually open the search box. And I just have a screenshot here. And so when you get the search box here, if you click on a specific word or even just search to it, it will take you right to that point in the timeline. You can even hit play from here. And you can also do text-based editing. If I delete something, it will just delete that from the timeline. And then on the left-hand side next to what that person is saying, you can actually just type in the name of that person, and it will just intelligently go through the entire thing and assign that person's name to every, like it has face detection, so it knows, and it knows that every time Bob speaks, that is Bob, and I can just go in there and jump to that specific thing that he said. So Very, very useful, and you do need DaVinci Resolve Studio to do that.
Next question.
This one's from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Anyone have experience with Q-Sys AV Room setups? Local school board wants to install one for the fall.
So far, we didn't have anybody raise a hand on this, and I'm not familiar with that. So we may have one of those few times where we just don't have the right combination of panelists with experience in this particular area. It does happen occasionally. So sorry about that, Roscoe. Hopefully, remember, I don't know if you put this in through the QR code. If you put it in through the QR code, it'll stay persistent in our system. If you put it in as a standard question, it's going to come back into your notes field if we don't address it on the show. So you'll be able to bring it back another day when there's a different mix of people on the panel here. Sorry about that. Next question.
Archie Trevetti in Daytona Beach, Florida, USA. How would you set up OBS for switching between 1080 by 1920 to 1920 by 1080 between the needs? Zoom also has been working, but showed 25 FPS on a recent use case.
So horizontal versus vertical. Jeffrey Powers, can you help?
So, yes, I can. But Harshit, I just need to know a couple things. Are you taking the same video and you're turning it, or are you taking the same video and you're making it into a letterbox form or a vertical format?
I would either want to record in a vertical format, so the 1080p by 1920, or have the choice of recording in horizontal format. I'm not taking. I don't mind taking the stuff that's already in post and then changing it through like Opus or something. But in this use case, is using OBS, but having a couple profiles or having a quicker use case or switching between the two.
Okay. So if you're trying to make one HD and one vertical version, I don't know if OBS does that. You could do it on vMix. You can do it on Wirecast. But it does take a lot of resource when you do that. And what I used to do was I used to do the two OBS thing where you install OBS and then you move it to a different folder and then you install the second OBS, and that way you have two shots coming, or two OBSs working at the same time on the same computer. Of course, that takes more resources as well. So you could have one that is vertical, one that is horizontal. But the better way to do it is to actually just take two computers, be able to split the signal either via some sort of HDMI or SDI splitter, or if you're using NDI, then you can bring that in a little bit easier and then run them separate from there. So I thought you meant actually doing it in the same video, and for that I usually do two layers, and I blur and opaque the background layer so that fills out the HD video, or I have a background script running like a video or something like that.
Alexander Knight?
Yeah, Jeffrey's right. You really need more resources because the problem is that, yes, you can go into the OBS canvas settings and change the resolution, but then that changes it for the entire document. So if you need to be able to do both, usually what I do is just in post, you can crop. If you record at a high enough resolution, you can crop and zoom in and reframe things afterwards. Now, if you're trying to actually do a live stream, for example, and you wanted a live stream to go out to, say, YouTube at 16:9 wide aspect, but then you also wanted a live stream to a vertical video platform, then you really are talking about having two separate systems. Like Jeffrey suggested, you should probably have two different computers there running OBS. You could maybe have one that's doing the widescreen stuff and then maybe send NDI streams to another computer, and then the other computer would be live streaming in vertical, and you would have that one set up to the proper 9:16 resolution, and then you would reframe it properly. But again, more resources.
One of the things I did back early in my career when we were starting to see a lot of vertical video was to establish a transparent overlay that had a 1920 by 1920 field, and then there was a 1080 1920 vertical and a 1920 1080 horizontal. It looked like a big red cross symbol, right? But it was transparent. And I used to overlay on that my camera feeds a lot so that I would always know what would this shot look like in vertical and horizontal? And interestingly enough, you end up doing very much what we do here in office hours, which is instead of, offset for the rule of thirds, we do everything dead center. And that's exactly the type of thing that makes it somewhat easier to do two cuts out of the same shot. It's an interesting thing now that we have two competing, completely different orientation formats. My 2 cents. Next question.
Brian Carney in Wheaton, Illinois. I'm about to dive into teaching an introduction to video production course at a local college. I've never taught a class before at any level. Any thoughts, suggestions, and encouragement you can provide a rookie?
I'm sure there will be a good little bit. Jeffrey Powers, start us off.
I'm going to quote Real Genius. I should have just done the quote, but then have you guess it. But always, no, never forget to check your references. So teaching a that's the best part about teaching an introductory class is you got a whole bunch of people that don't know what they're going to expect, and bringing in something that you've found is your real world experience is the most important thing. Like for instance, never forget gaff tape, or always have a second tripod, or anything like that. Just silly things that you can wrap a story around, and that's the key right there. Because if you got those stories, then people are going to listen, people are going to learn, and then you can hit them with the color cards and positioning and where you can put people on a camera, things like that, and then they can really soak up that information for what you need. So there is no one specific thing except just have everything ready, because you never know what kind of questions they're going to ask, because you don't know what experience they have, if they're just running iPhones, or if they've run PTZ cameras, or they did something at their local church or whatnot.
Rodney Hopsaway, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say move backwards. So start with what the goal should be. What would they be expected to have been learning when finished of everything? Then you start writing up some descriptions of that specific goals. And what we've done with great success is to add those goals into an LLM or let's say ChatGPT or Grok or something, and get help from that to structure the learning kind of topics and the content of each topic. Then you, of course, use your own experience and knowledge to fill out around all these topics. And of course, as Jeffrey just said, you need to know what they already know, so you can try to find the level of where the students are, so that you don't overwhelm them or in some cases underwhelm them. You could have students that are really, really experienced in this field, or have big holes in some of the important things. Let's say you have a student that is really good in video composition, the creative thing, and it's really knowing nothing about audio processing and capturing audio. And just if this is about video editing something, one thing you need to add to them is the knowledge of having the room audio captured. So 30 seconds or 1 minute of just room audio, so that you have something to put behind if you need to do overdub, etc. So there is so many tricks and tips that you need to get them to learn, and as everything else, they need to experience this themselves. So you need equipment, you need them to be hands-on, and be very careful of balancing the theory against the practical tasks. So you have to let them have a kind of a playroom to play in a studio or similar, just to get their hands on the equipment and try to learning by doing stuff as well.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, think of this as it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of them probably already have knowledge that you may think that they're walking in like they've never done anything before, but chances are a lot of them have done a TikTok or uploaded a video to YouTube. So you're going to have a range of people in your class, and depending on how fun you want to make it, I mean, out the gate, you could just do something on day one where you show a basic setup of some basic lights, basic audio, basic editing, and you could do this in an hour. I used to do a demo where I would do all of this on the road. I went on and did a road show where we did this in 1 hour. We showed shoot, edit, and deliver. And then it led into our 3-day workshop. So I used to teach for a company called DV Creators, where I taught teachers of all people at universities all around the country, every major city. And we would talk about pre-production, production, post-production, and then delivery and content distribution. But again, like Ronnie was saying, ChatGPT is something that is super powerful in this realm because you can have it create a syllabus for you, and you can always tweak it, but it gives you a great kind of outline of what it suggests, and it's pretty smart. ChatGPT is actually really good in this manner. In fact, I did it. It says, set up a basic 3-point lighting, record clean audio, edit a 60-second video, frame a shot using the rule of thirds, deliver a short video to YouTube with B-roll. And that's the basics of it. And then from there you can evolve it out. But if it's just a one quarter, you're probably going to have way more than enough content. But showing them the difference between, like, here's a shotgun mic close to the subject, here's a shotgun mic on the camera, just little things like that. Here's 3-point lighting versus no 3-point lighting, and then they see the difference. And then auto exposure versus manual exposure. You start to get into these things that really make the production look like Hollywood, as we say.
And you wonder why I'm always talking up the chat, but right here earlier in this discussion, John Foltz popped in and said, Brian Carden, hit me up on Discord. I teach a class like this all the time. I can share a ton of info. Other people, Roscoe said, yeah, hit me up too if you want. I'll share my handouts. The community. I mean, that's part of being part of the office hours community, is if you do get involved and get kind of more connected in, you will find an almost unlimited resource of people who are incredibly generous and willing to sit with you, talk with you, and literally pass along the information they've spent all their time building to help you make this class a success. So good luck, Brian. Come back and let us know how things go. Next question.
Paul Valhos in Austin, Texas. How would you utilize the Synology DS1522 Plus NAS, that's network attached storage, with NVMe read-write cache in your production workflow? What are the use cases of it, and can you use it to create additional backup drives that you attach to it and store offline? Ronnie Hofsoy is going to help you here. Ronnie?
I'm not sure about this specific thing, but it seems it has USB connections that you can attach external drives. So we never create backup drives inside the single drive. So we have, of course, either working Synology box with that, and we don't back up to the same box. Backups is going externally, normally through the cloud or other NASs. But if you need to have this going out on external drives, what I've done previously is just to have 3.5 or 2.5 SSD docking station, and just add drives to that docking station, and that docking station is connected to the Synology through a USB connection. And that is working perfectly. Some of these drives, I don't know if this specifically have its own button to do the backup, and if you just have a clean drive in the docking, you just hit the button and the backupping will start and will make sure you have at least 2 copies of your original content.
Guy Cochran?
Yeah, for like editing, it depends on what you're doing. It's not going to be fast enough to edit footage off of, and it's not going to be large enough to really store stuff on. So this would be good for like graphics, other assets, scripts and audio files, things that you utilize, and then having a team if they need to grab things off that. And it just makes life so much easier to have a server, but you need something really fast with 10 gig, and then all the machines need to have 10 gig to really get up to having something where you're sharing massive data files, unless you can shrink your video files to something very, very small, and you could do that with compressor or something like that if it's acceptable, depending on how the quality of the output needs to be perceived. If it's just for YouTube, can it be 1080? Or if you're shooting in 4K, do you really need 4K? And you could just dumb it down. As far as backups, I have a Synology here, and I just have a USB drive attached to it, and it backs up. I think it's every night, and I think you can change it from incremental, so it's not doing the whole thing; it's just changing the incrementals. And then I have it hooked up to Google to where it just in the middle of the night also backs up, and you could also do Dropbox as well using the built-in software. So those are a couple ways, but really this is kind of the baby Synology. If you Google Synology Run Studios, you'll see locally there's a studio in Seattle here called Run Studios, and they profiled them on a big Synology station, and they have multiple RAIDs with multiple backups with multiple users, and you could see where if you're building this out for the future, how a real big studio, because they do a lot of work for Microsoft, so tons of work for Microsoft. So there's projects coming in and out with dozens of editors, so you can see how the big boys do it.
Hey, if you have any questions you want to put into the show queue, you can also type in askofficehours.global. I'm going to toss up the QR code to get you to the same place. That's askofficehours.global. And so if you're watching the show, you can use that QR code, shoot it with your phone or something like that, and it takes you kind of directly into our Q&A system. Back end folks will take a look at it and make sure, try to keep it simple, simple language. One question, don't stack a bunch of questions because we really can't handle that, and we will just kick that back out. But askofficehours.global is the quick way to get your questions into the show. Next question.
This one's from Harshit Javedi in Daytona Beach, Florida, USA. Upon using Zoom Business, a finding came out of it with the FPS at 25. Can you enable the business account to push 30 frame rates per second constantly?
And right after he put the question in, Harshit raised his hand. So Harshit, do you want to expand on anything?
Yeah, so I did a recording recently, and it was just a two-person meeting recording. So I just wanted to, once they got the file back, captioning was turned on. I sent them basically the MP4 file, and the finding that they found was that it is at 25 frames per second. So when it came to editing, it became a little bit more difficult, or they had to do some stuff to make it work properly to get it matching the 30 frames per second. So just kind of want some insight on that.
Alexander Knight is going to help you out. Alexander?
So the answer is no, because this is the way Zoom is designed. Zoom tends to prioritize audio over video, and frame rate and resolution is consistently variable, which is one of the challenges with it. So for example, it won't do more than 30 frame rates per second because that's what the platform is locked to. But if you have problems with bandwidth or system resources, your resolution may be downgraded from 1080p. Your frame rate may be downgraded from 30. It may dip to 25. It may even dip to a much lower frame rate that looks awful. I've run into this before. In fact, in using a program like mimoLive to do ISO video records, they actually had to implement a new feature for ISO records where you could actually custom set a frame rate and resolution on the recording to kind of fix this problem, because you can actually have a lot of problems in post with the recording if you just let it record whatever the source frame rate is. Like I had one recording that I had to I couldn't salvage, and we had to get that person, we had to interview that person again because their frame rate dipped all the way down to 15 FPS, and it was because it was constantly changing throughout the whole video. It was just a nightmare. There's no way I could time align it, and even if I reprocessed the video at 30, it would like fall out of sync. It would slow down or speed up at some point later in the video. So using something like mimoLive, Harshit, and then forcing the source, the recording to be the frame rate that you want, you can lock it down to 30. There's a free watermark, like evaluation version of mimoLive that you can use to test this out if you want, and we can talk about that later. But it's just how Zoom works, unfortunately.
Ronnie Hossoy?
Yeah, both Alexander and me have experienced this problem before several times on my account. So the solution is exactly what Alexander said. We started using mimoLive after they implemented the kind of where you can define your recording frame rate isolated from what the source is inputting to the flow, and that way you can have a recorded file that is exactly what you would like it to be. Normally, the internal recordings inside Zoom is 25 FPS all the time, even though the platform itself is 30 FPS. So this is you should not be trusting Zoom for doing these recordings. At least if you have multiple angles that you need to cut together afterwards, it will be a nightmare.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, I agree with everything. I would add to this the fact that it's all about that computer. It's all about that internet connection. If they're running a laptop, a wireless, as opposed to hardwired, if they're doing anything that is creating any type of connection, if there are problems, if their computer has 100 tabs open or other programs running in the background, or they're doing something else on the network, all of this stuff will bring the frame rate down to 25 or less from there. As for post encoding, Topaz probably does the best job for creating something that can get you to 30 and even 60 frames a second, but you're going to notice the difference on that.
Next question.
This one's come from Roland Booth in Jamaica. On the ZowieBox 4K HDMI Video Encoder Decoder, are you able to change the default IP address?
Jeffrey Powers?
Absolutely. So I'll just pop up my ZowieBox. So basically, this is how I run my Zowie. So I have all my cameras hardwired into an ATEM Mini going to the ZowieBox so I can actually see it. So this is my ZowieBox right here. If you go over to settings and you go over to network, there is all the IP settings right there. You can change it, you can put on DHCP, you can take off DHCP. But the problem is, if you do that, it might go through a cycle, and you might, if you're doing any streaming or anything like that, it might stop, and as it recycles with the IP address.
So let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael's asking, just tested mimoLive 6.11.1b2, and I'm very impressed by the test meeting. How are the characters being played out?
Guy Cochran, can you help us out?
Yeah, I mean, this is a super ultra valuable resource that I'm surprised more people don't take advantage of. Usually I look over, because this is hosted out of what we'll call the Cochrane Cloud here. It's basically a $4,000 computer running 8 copies of mimoLive. So it looks like... actually, that's the ZowieBox question that I was about to answer. Let me jump over to a different, I have it routed differently, but basically that's the gist of it. It's 8 copies of mimoLive Mac M2 Ultra, and they're all playing at the same time. So there's a way in mimoLive that Oliver has created an Apple script to push all these into a Zoom meeting. So basically this meeting just runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've had it running since May of last year. And it doesn't just work with mimoLive, it works with Ecamm. So I'll see the Ecamm guys in there. I'll see there's people that are testing Zoom Rooms custom AV. I'll see, I don't want to name names, but there's some big companies that are in there utilizing this thing every day. And it's a super valuable resource, because in the old days, we used to have to, phone somebody up and be like, hey, can you jump into this meeting real quick? I need a head so that I could lay this out. And now with this meeting, anybody could join, and it automatically, if you say request recording privileges, it's set to automatically grant these privileges. So there's some things where it doesn't work. Viz needs live streaming permissions, and so does Wirecast. So those you would have to ping me in Discord, but I'd prefer that you find another way, or just spin up your own meetings if you're using those two, because I offered that for a while, and unless it's really an emergency, I'd rather not be like, hey, contact me 24 hours a day, because I've had it to where people took advantage of that. So.
There's a second question in here. I think that's related. So let's go to the next question.
Yeah, this is my follow-up question. Guy, in the free AI test Zoom meeting that we can all use, what is generating those AI characters?
So
Guy?
Oliver made those in Synthesia, and now we're looking at using extra hours, real people, and pushing that in. I've been recording some, but we haven't had like a really great show that has a lot of banter back and forth, because really it gets pretty boring if somebody's just talking for 5 minutes and then you're like, when do I cut? Because I want to make some of these available using the faster machines now, these M4, because that machine costs us $4,000, but now you could do it with a $500 computer. You can get 6 people or 6 camera feeds. So I'm looking, if somebody has ISOs of either a sporting event, a concert, something royalty-free where we can use it, I want to push this out there so that kids or, high school, we're talking about that gentleman in Illinois who wanted to teach video production. Imagine if you could say, here, just open up this app, log into this meeting, and here you've got 6, wide shot, jib shot, all these different cool shots where people can cut a show, and it just runs 24/7. So I want to build out a couple of these just for training purposes where anybody could go in and use it for free.
Hey, if you value what we do here, there are a few ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can volunteer at officehours.global/volunteer. Get to meet a lot of really nice people that become part of the team that makes all this possible. Or you can simply donate if you'd prefer to do that at officehours.global/donate. We are a 501c3. Next question.
Yeah, this question is coming from Ronnie Hofsoy in Tromsø, Norway, and here on the panel, who I think is trying to encourage me to pull a Cochrane. How to optimize mimoLive when needing to stream at 4K, but all sources are limited to 1080p.
Well, then let's do the circle and send it right back to you, Alexander.
I just so happen to have a copy of mimoLive here. So if you guys can see, I'm sure they're probably cutting to my screen share. You guys can see mimoLive there on my screen, right? I've got a blank template here. So basically, when you set up mimoLive, you would go to your document settings here. So if you click this button here in the toolbar where it says configure the show, you can see right now I've set it to 4K. So this is 3840 by 2160. And this is where you would basically change this. Now, before I change this, let me just quickly add an output destination here. So I'm going to do a live stream. So let's just say I'm going to do a custom RTMP server here. Let me just move this toolbar out of the way so I can see this. Okay, so if we go down here into our stream settings, let me just expand this, encoding at H.264. So we want to make sure we get into the better quality VP9 codec pipeline. So effectively, we need to send anything higher than 1080p resolution. So that could be 1440p, or you can go all the way up to 4K if you wanted, for example, here. So I'm going to say custom resolution for my video size. I would set it to 3840 by 2160, so that's 4K. Set your bit rate appropriately. So that's where you would set it. Set it to constant bit rate because that's what YouTube wants to see. So that's where you would set your custom resolution. Now I'm going to go back to my document settings here. So to conserve system resources, since all my Zoom sources and everything, all my layers, are going to be 1080p. This is just needlessly wasting processor resources. In my tests, I was able to reclaim almost 20% of my total system processor. So I'm just going to change this to 1920. Whoop, that's not 1920. 1920 by 1080. And you can see in the preview as I'm changing resolution here, that mimoLive just reflows and resizes everything automatically. So now my document, everything that I'm looking at is 1080p, but the live stream is getting upscaled to my custom resolution that I specified, which is 4K, and that's how you do it.
Thank you, Alexander. Hopefully, Ronnie, that helps you figure out what's going on. Next question.
This one is coming from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Recently, a WSJ article warned companies to not put AI in their marketing. What do you say?
Ooh, the Wall Street Journal is down on marketing with AI. Ronnie Hofsoy, what do you think?
Yeah, I've seen this trend from moving from spare titles here and there to now almost be everywhere. And I think Wall Street Journal is right. A lot of the companies that are flagging the AI in products or services they provide, most of them does not use AI for that. It's machine learning or advanced algorithms or other stuff going behind the scenes. And they just kind of try to tell people that this is AI and it's modern, it's new, it's fresh, and it's really, really advanced, while it's not. So the trust in companies that kind of throw these AI around in every other word is kind of getting, I'm not trusting them because they're not telling the truth. It's not AI. It's not even close to AI. It's just a word that is kind of getting less and less power as more and more companies use it the wrong way. So I'm totally on board with Wall Street Journal here. They should not do that. They should stop using AI.
I wonder if part of this, I didn't read the article, I wonder if part of it has to do with the fact that AI generative stuff can't be copyrighted. And if you're putting that in your ads, people can steal it. Interesting thing. Next question.
This question is coming from Douglas Carmichael. Jeffrey, it's interesting how you're using the ZowieBox to monitor your ATEM. Are you using it as a confidence monitor?
Jeffrey?
Absolutely. So basically, like I said before, my ATEM Mini, all it's doing is it's capturing each of my cameras here in the studio. So I can record, I can basically record all 4 of them because I could do it in vMix, but that of course takes up resources and I don't want to tax my computer. So if I need to do more than one extra camera to record. If it's a single camera, like for instance my over-the-shoulder camera, I'll probably just do a stem on vMix. But if I'm doing 2 or more cameras, I will revert to the ATEM Mini to do the recording. And then of course it is headless. It's not hooked up to a computer or anything like that, so it is hooked up to the ZowieBox. And that's basically what I'm doing. So I can set it up, of course, for program. I can set it up for multi-view. So I can see what's going on, and then it comes back via NDI, so I can open up a studio monitor, because I run all NDI here. I can open up studio monitor and actually make sure that all the cameras are working properly as I'm going back and forth. So it's really nice to do it that way, and yeah, I can stuff that into a corner and not even have to touch it. And then when I need to get the files, I just go to FileZilla, I buy IP address and download them to my computer.
Next question.
Paul Vahus in Austin, Texas. What are the best what are the potential use cases and workflow implications for the generative video capabilities demonstrated by Minimax.io?
Jeffrey, did you look at this, and what's your assessment of what Minimax is good for?
Absolutely. So what I'm seeing with the video, what they're trying to do is they're trying to work with companies or people that want to create a whole bunch of headless videos. I've been doing a lot of research into what's called N8N, which is it's a scripting thing. So basically, let's say I wanted to do a video an hour on YouTube. I could set up a script that basically says, go to AI, create the script, go back to AI and create an image, and then go back and create the video from that, and then put it all together and then push it out to YouTube. So I think what they're doing is they're giving people that don't want to learn how to do all of that into something that's easier. So I could create a video, and then I could put a script behind that video, whether I type it in or have AI do it, and then have all this put into a video that could be used for marketing, although New York Times says no, and or for YouTube or for anything like that. Just basically get soup to nuts out the door as quick as possible.
Oh, we're going into an interesting world here where the machines are creating more and more and more and more and more content in little bites, and we're going to have more and more and more, I think, difficulty trying to separate the wheat from the chaff, which is to say true experiential wisdom from generative simplicity. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting world coming up as we get into this. Thank you all for watching. We truly appreciate your being here every day on Office Hours for us, and just like we truly appreciate all the constituencies who make this show possible every day, particularly the big constituencies that we have that show up, our producers, the people who watch the show and add the questions in. You really do drive this show, and we thank you for your input every single day. To the panelists who bring their expertise and answer these questions based on lifetime careers of experience, and to our amazing back-end crew, the people who are unsung except for a small credit roll at the end, and that doesn't even cover all of them because there's a lot of people working in the background that you don't even see on the credits, and we thank all of you for touching this show and making it possible. Our Telect traversal today, 32,000 miles. That's how far you would have had to go to meet the people and see the people and get this information from them. 51,000 kilometers is the equivalent. That's 251 million bananas for scale. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget, it is Thursday. That means David Paskin, and the rundown is tonight. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you all for being here.
And we started with 3 questions, was it?
Yeah, we had 3 when we came in this morning. We managed once again to fill up a whole show. In fact, I think this show may be the first one I have ever done where we're going to end up just a hair inside of exactly a 1-hour show.
Ronnie, you posed that question wrong. You should have said, did we start out with 5 questions? I mean, 3 questions?
We're getting close to the weekend, so I wish everyone an exciting weekend.
Good game, good show.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Catch you later.